calling to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education. We are meeting at the Fordyce building. Today is February 11th, 2013. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. DeAngelis.
Here.
Mrs. Lysy.
Here.
Mr. Smith. Here. Mrs. Suter.
Here.
Mrs. Van Hoen.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt the minutes of January 14th and 28th.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Suter, second.
Second.
By Mrs. DeAngelis. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lysy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Suter.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Hoen.
Yes.
Mrs. DeAngelis.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. At this time, do we have a legislative report? Mr. Smith?
Yes, President Van Hoen. Very quickly, since we last met in front of the cameras, the state budget was introduced by Governor Kasich, and some of that included the public education budget, the K-12 education budget. And it's, I just want to caution, everyone that the process is, because I've already heard from one Euclid taxpayer that, oh, that means the Euclid schools are getting $8 million. No, this is the first step in the budget process. And it also, while it appears like we're getting $8 million, they've increased it seems like they've increased the student count so that we don't really think that we're going to wind up with that $8 million, even if the budget is not changed as it moves forward. So I want to quote a couple of, I've got 4 different newspaper articles, one of which is, you all should know that our new superintendent is thought of highly enough already in the greater Cleveland community. The Plain Dealer quoted him fairly extensively in a Thursday, February 7th article, where he essentially said, and I will quote the man sitting next to me as it was reported in the paper, "At first blush, it looks pretty good. It appears the governor recognizes the significant challenges in economically disadvantaged cities, and he's trying to fill that gap." That by Euclid Superintendent Keith Bell. The governor also said, as reported in Sunday's Plain Dealer, as a bit of a summary standpoint, Kasich is quoted as saying, "If you are poor, you're going to get more. If you're richer, you're going to get less." That was his explanation for his initial funding rollout in terms of K-12 education. However, that runs a little contradictory to some of the numbers that are actually reported, such as some of the poorest districts, Cleveland, East Cleveland, Warrensville Heights, among them would get no extra money as compared to their last budget. Now I'd like to, where did I put it? I've got an opinion piece from Sunday's Newark Advocate, which is a Central Ohio newspaper. Again, from yesterday's Newark Advocate, the very first sentence in this op-ed piece: "How can a plan to improve Ohio's decades-old school funding saga give only 40% of the school districts more funds?" So they're essentially saying this budget doesn't work for us. And I would just remind people that even though it looks like the Euclid City Schools are potentially going to get more money right now, quoting from the Akron Beacon Journal on February 4th, comparing this budget to the last budget, because the state of Ohio runs on a 2-year budget cycle, and again, the timing of this is the budget has now been introduced by the governor. It will go to the state legislature, and it needs to be in place by July 1st. So it's going to be debated by the folks that represent us in the 99 House districts and the 33 state Senate districts, and the governor will eventually sign some version of this. And what the Akron Beacon Journal did is it said, yes, while this budget does increase K-12 funding, it's important to keep in mind that Mr. Kasich's first biennium budget actually decreased public school funding by 7.8%, while charter and private school funds increased 12.4% and 21.6% respectively. So if the Euclid City Schools actually do wind up with more money than what we were counting on from the state of Ohio, I think it's important to keep in mind that to a certain extent, this might just fill the gap fill the hole that Governor Kasich created for this district 2 years ago. So while, yes, there was some good news, and yes, we acknowledged it in the Plain Dealer, we're a long way from having this budget finalized, as again, I believe 400 out of the 613 public school districts actually don't see an increase. Now, I heard that from a speaker on Thursday night, so I don't want to quote that speaker or because I can't really vouch for those facts because those weren't referenced. But if you think back to what the Newark Advocate wrote in their op-ed just on Sunday, I think this budget and this specifically the K-12 funding piece is going to have a rough road as it tries to make its way through the state legislature. But obviously we will keep everyone at home apprised as how those negotiations unfold and how it positively or negatively affects the Euclid School District. And I will be headed down, I believe, March 20th, actually, to see if I can help make a case for the Euclid District as this process unfolds. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's important that everybody remembers that the state is really controlled by a large, more rural area than we are, or the suburban areas. And when I was checking through those numbers, I was looking at some of my favorite districts from out west, and they all got 0. And so I'm thinking those legislators are going to be really pounding to try and get some money for their districts. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Mrs. DeAngelis, do you have a student liaison report?
Yes, I do. With the help of Audrey, the communications, and Mr. Bell, I got some information this meeting I'd like to share with everybody about the different schools in the district. I want to start with the elementary schools. Bluestone, they just finished having a food drive, and they collected 2,516 non-perishable items. These items are being distributed through the Euclid Hunger Center and the new Bluestone Food Pantry. They also have a roller skating party planned for February 20th, and will be hosting Local Heroes program on Thursday, February 28th. Then also now at Shoreview, this past Friday, they hosted a Valentine's Day dance for the 3rd through 5th graders. I stopped by on my way home from work that night, and the kids were all really pretty dressed up nicely and ready to go.
That's nice.
And then for the past 6 weeks, the 5th grade students have been learning how to ballroom dance. And on February 21st at 7 p.m., Mrs. Macklin's, Mrs. Mamage, and Mrs. Rich's class will be showcasing their dancing skills learned in the dancing classrooms at Shoreview. It should be a fun new event for them. And students and staff voted on a mascot. Shoreview will now be called the Jaguars. At Chardon Hills, they started off the month with Black History Month with an African American read-in. Mr. Bell came and read to the students along with a few other special guests. They also, the Chardon Hills students, were photographed in the Plain Dealer with the article about Governor Kasich's new plan. Arbor School will be hosting their Valentine's Day dance on February 14th, and they also will be having spring pictures being taken on February 20th. So the elementary schools have been very busy, and their orchestra and bands will be having a concert on this coming Wednesday, February 13th at 7 o'clock at the high school. The middle schools. Forest Park also had their Valentine's Day dance on Friday night, and after I was at Shoreview, I swung by Forest Park. The kids were dancing a little bit more, and they weren't as dressed up as nice as they were at Shoreview, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, to see the kids, everybody coming in the doors, and everybody was like ready for a nice evening out. They also had the Academics Award ceremony this past Wednesday. Central Middle School, unfortunately, they took second place in the Cool Schools contest. And they said thank you to everybody who voted for them. Next time they're going to win. The boys basketball team has 8 wins and 7 losses. And tonight was their last game of the season, the regular season. Forest Park and Central were playing each other here at the high school. The girls basketball, 14 wins, 0 losses. And they're going to be in a tournament starting on February 20th. And when the wrestling season is finished, they had a great finish at Roxborough Middle School tournament. Now on to our high school. The girls basketball played this past weekend for the LEL championships, but unfortunately they lost. Boys basketball is played Shaw on Friday, February 8th. Winter Sports Pep Rally was held Friday, February 8th at the high school. And then also last week, 6 seniors who plan on playing football in college signed letters of intent. And their names are Miles Alexander, will play for the University of Findlay. Matt Blaha will play for Siena Heights University. Juan Ford, Terrence Roscoe Jr., and McKinney Mitchell will play for Notre Dame College of Ohio. And Lyndon Stevens will be playing at Hargraves Military Academy. There's a few more seniors who are planning on signing in the month of March, here they said. Stand-up will be at Central. The stand-up group that Mrs. Hopkins oversees at the high school will be at Central on February 20th and at Forest Park on February 12th tomorrow. The wrestling team beat Chanel and VSJ to finish a 19-6 record, which is their best dual meet record ever. So pretty cool. The following swimmers qualified for districts, which is happening this coming weekend at Cleveland State. Mike D'Arcy was the lone boy on the boys swim team, and then Samantha Lisey, Emma Hastings, Emily Reeve, Andrea Bertel, Nicole Hughes, and Rachel Essel were the girls who qualified for this weekend. Nicole qualified as a diver for the high school, and the girls team a couple weeks ago also won the LEL for the first time ever for Euclid High School. The show choir on February 20th at 7 o'clock, Euclid High School will be hosting the 81st annual LEL choir festival. There's 5 choirs competing that night, and it's free admission. It'll be held in the high school auditorium. And this past weekend, the Euclid Varsity Chorale competed in its first competition, and they did a very nice job for their first competition this season. And their next competition is Saturday, February 23rd at Twinsburg, and the following week they're in Solon on March 2nd. So there's lots of things that are happening in the district, in and out of the classroom, and that we need to highlight. A lot of the events are free, and they're open to anybody to come and watch.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, are there any visitor comments relative to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on then to the reports and recommendations of the treasurer, Mr. Vasak.
Thank you. Item 8 is a resolution to approve financial data as submitted to the board, and I recommend approval.
Is there a motion? So moved. Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second?
Second.
By Mr. Smith. Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Sudar?
Yes.
Mrs. Van Hoen?
Yes.
Mrs. DeAngelis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lysy?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Item 9 is a resolution to establish the board's service fund. This is an annual resolution to establish a fund for board's expenses for the 2013 year, and I recommend approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second?
Second.
By Mrs. DeAngelis. Any questions or comments? Just want to point out that this is a requirement of state law, and they determine how much we have to put in the fund. Okay, thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Sudar?
Yes.
Mrs. Van Hoen?
Yes.
Mrs. DeAngelis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lysy? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. And item 10 is a resolution accepting 3 generous donations, $170 from the Mentor United Methodist Church, $500 from the community of St. Peter, and $500 from Catherine Pasquale in the memory of Benjamin Pasquale. All of these donations are to be used for the high school mediation fund. I recommend approval.
Is there a motion? So moved. Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second? Second. By Mrs. Lysy. Any questions or comments? I just want to commend Kathleen McDonald for working very diligently to raise money. There's now 3 churches from Mentor that have donated, and this year so far she's raised $2,320 for the mediation program. So that's over twice what she did last year. And the year's not done, so congratulations to her. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Van Hoen?
Yes.
Mrs. DeAngelis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lysy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Sudar?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0, and that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll turn to reports and recommendations of the superintendent. Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'd like to turn this portion, items number 11 and 12, over to Dr. Andrea Selico, who will propose our resolutions for approval. Dr. Selico.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Item number 11 is a resolution considering the certified staff for the 2012-2013 school year, and I recommend approval.
Is there a motion? So moved. Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second? Second. By Mrs. Lysy. Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. De Angelis.
Yes.
Mrs. Lysy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Sudar.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Hoen.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item 12 is a resolution considering the classified staff for the 2012-2013 school year, and I recommend approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second.
Second.
By Mrs. De Angelis. Are there any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lysy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Sudar.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Hoen.
Yes.
Mrs. De Angelis.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item 13 is a resolution to advertise and receive bids for the purchase of 2 77-passenger or 84-passenger conventional buses for the 2013-14 school year, and recommend approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second.
Second.
By Mrs. De Angelis. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Higley, we had, I guess I should ask you and you can ask him.
Either way.
Okay. Mr. Higley, would you like to explain why we need to purchase more buses when we've cut transportation?
Sure. We did a study this past week on the amount of students bused and the amount of hours bused and so forth. There are about 245 hours spent daily in busing our students. We travel about 555 miles daily. 71% of that is outside of the district, which puts a lot of miles on our buses. 29% or 160 miles per day are spent transporting our Euclid public school kids. And again, that 395 is spent transporting charter schools, private schools, and so forth. It's because of that we tend to put a lot of miles on some of our buses, and it's good that we keep our bus fleet up to date because it's tough when you get behind. It's tough when you have several buses over 200,000 miles, which we have right now. So for that reason, it's important that we keep on top of our fleet to help alleviate some of the maintenance costs.
Okay. On bus purchases, the state no longer gives us any money towards those buses?
No,
or is it just...
no, they do not. We're part of the Ohio Schools Council, however, and for $325 a year, we get to take advantage of cooperative pricing that they negotiate, and it saves about $2,000 per bus, in addition to having to go out on our own to find those in the hours that we would spend negotiating and pulling in public bids. So it's quite a savings.
And do we get any reimbursement for actual transportation from the state?
We do, and I don't have that information on
Okay.
it.
Mr. Bassick, do you?
Yeah, it's a very complicated formula.
Of course.
I can get you the amount, but we do get reimbursement based on miles driven and students transported.
Okay. Okay. But it's interesting that 71% of our busing is
Yes.
outside the district.
Right.
That is a phenomenal number, and I don't think most people would realize.
I would add, if I can, that the reimbursement does not cover our costs.
Oh, I know the reimbursement
Just for the record.
I just remember the days when we used to get a better reimbursement and when they also paid for most of the bus. So it's, when they talk about state cuts, that never gets mentioned. But yet it's significant.
And Madam Chair, members of the board, if I could just add the fact that, I get calls regarding transportation and calls regarding, why, with our transportation, why is that not feasible when they look at the numbers, and I'm glad Mr. Higley was able to point out that 71% of what we transport is really not our students, or outside of our Euclid City School base, and so that's really what drives that cost up. So I think sometimes the public, when they look at that, they think it's a lot easier to be able to do, but you've got to put the whole picture together, and so it's a global piece and not just a Euclid piece, so it really adds that cost.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Sudar?
Yes.
Mrs. Van Hoen?
Yes.
Mrs. De Angelis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lysy.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item 14 is a consideration for the approval and ratification of the final payment for performance for the contract with Cardinal Environmental Services for hazardous materials at Glenbrook Elementary School, and I am asking for approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second.
Second.
By Mrs. Lysy. Any questions or comments?
Why is this coming up now? Could you explain
Yes,
the
there's-
delay in the...
Go to the podium,
Sure.
please.
Yes, there's a retainage fee that's held on any contract regarding construction. So this retainage fee was held on this contract to make sure that the work was done satisfactorily. There's a closeout process to every contract that we have, and it's not uncommon that it could take up to 10 months, 12 months, and sometimes even longer regarding that closeout process.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much for your explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Higley.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Sudar.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Hoen.
Yes.
Mrs. De Angelis.
Yes.
Mrs. Lysy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item 15 is a consideration to approve 3 out-of-district field trips. The first one is the Euclid Elite Show Choir at the high school. Would be attending and would be going to Kalamazoo, Michigan, along with
No, the choir goes to Herscher.
Herscher, Illinois. Okay, Herscher, Illinois. I'm sorry. And the varsity chorale will be going to Herscher, Illinois also. Those 2 groups will be going together. And this is for approval for them. And then we also have students that will be going, the mediation group would be going to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I'm asking for approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Is that, Mrs. Sudar, did you?
There's a third edition, the University of Akron.
There is.
I missed that.
Yep, thank
Still
you.
have the old one.
Yep, the University of Akron College Fair, which was a late edition, asking for approval of that one. That's on the 19th of February.
Thank you.
So asking for approval for all 4. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second.
Second.
By Mrs. De Angelis. Any questions or comments? Well, the Kalamazoo trip for the Peace Jam Conference is one that we've been doing every year, and it's a wonderful program for our mediation students. And the other ones are all new to us, so we'll have to find out what happens. Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Van Hoen.
Yes.
Mrs. De Angelis.
Yes.
Mrs. Lysy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Sudar.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
And thank you. And finally, the last one is a consideration to proclaim National School Breakfast Week, and that's the week of March 4th through the 8th. And just really a consideration for that. And if you need any details, I know Mr. Higley can give you some details on that, but it's just the approval of National School Breakfast Week.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second.
Second.
By Mrs. De Angelis. Mr. Higley, did you want to tell us about that program?
I knew he was waiting to do that, so I wanted to...
Typically during National Breakfast Week, we have grandparents come to school and eat breakfast with the kids. We try to do some things special each day at the different elementaries, but that's generally planned at the building level, and I can send some information out when I get that per building.
Okay, thank you. We all know that breakfast is an important meal. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Sudar.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Hoen.
Yes.
Mrs. De Angelis.
Yes.
Mrs. Lysy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Did you have any informal?
Sure. I just want to just thank the team here and also our stakeholders that attended the 90-day meeting last week. We had good attendance at Arbor, and appreciate the turnout and appreciate the support. We'll be at Chardon Hills on May 8th, and look forward at 7 p.m. and look forward to our next 90-day update. So again, I appreciate that. Also, just a reminder that Friday school will be closed, and also on Monday we'll celebrate President's Day. And Madam President, that concludes my informal.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any communications or petitions?
We do not.
Okay, any new or old business?
No.
Is there any board members informal? Wow, it's a really quick meeting this time.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you wanted to add one thing?
Yeah, just one other thing, just members of the board too, I sent you an email just to try to get the Phase 2 questions to me, so I get those on Wednesday and have an opportunity to get that information back. And then our next work session is scheduled for March 4th. Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. Just want to say that the meetings go so quickly when the board is prepared and done their homework ahead of time, and all these items were routine items. So this time, are there any visitor comments? I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second.
I'll second that.
By Mrs. Heisey. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Van Hoen.
Yes.
Mrs. De Angelis.
Yes.
Mrs. Lysy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Sudar.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We are adjourned.